My Play Select viewers, welcome to another episode of Play Select, and in this episode, you ain't gonna believe this, man. We got Blood Dragon 2, we have a brand new Resident Evil, and we even have a Hollywood celebrity on our show, so check it out. Comic fans, Frank Miller fans, RoboCop fans, and Terminator fans. Oh wait, and Blood Dragon fans, you guys get ready for this news, because on July the 9th, 2014, we have the 20th anniversary reissue of Frank Miller's famous RoboCop vs. Terminator. It's a really good comic, really early stuff, but it looks fantastic. You should totally read it. Anyways, I said Blood Dragon earlier, and this is how I'm gonna link the stories in a horrible segue. Ubisoft's president really was happy on the fact that Blood Dragon did so well. You know, the spin-off from Far Cry 3. And that being said, he's always been wanting to make a sequel for it because of the money and the cha-ching. Well, because of this comic reissue, this is the perfect timing, and what we have right now is the news of a Blood Dragon 2 game, which is actually a RoboCop vs. Terminator versus Sergeant Rex Power Cult game. Yes, this sounds super exciting. I would play the ish out of this, and this is what we know so far. Now, remember in Far Cry 3 Blood Dragon, at the end of the game when you beat it, Dr. Darcy actually has glowing eyes, something that looks very familiar to those who know about Terminator. Well, it turns out she is a Terminator, and Cyberdyne was the company responsible for creating the Blood Dragons as well as starting the Second Vietnamese War. Yeah, crazy. So Rex Power Cult is back on the island once again, but because he can't handle all of this by himself, he needs to recruit his friend RoboCop, and this is when they tag team and fight the forces of evil in Neon. This is gonna be so cool. The fact that there's gonna be co-op between RoboCop as well as you can be Rex Power Cult, and the fact that Dean Evans and Alexander Letourneau, the original directors of the game, are back at the helm, and also, get this, it could be a possibility that Peter Weller, aka RoboCop, and Arnold Schwarzenegger, Terminator, they have a huge possibility of being on this, and also Michael Biehn, of course, reprises his role as Mr. Power Cult. Now this is gonna be awesome. I'm so hyped up for this because I'll tell you what, Blood Dragon is one of the best FPS I played last year, and I think this one is gonna be the best FPS I played in my whole life. If it comes out, I hope it does. So when you have a series as big as Resident Evil, and when it jumps the shark, about time it's gotta get back into reality. So that being said, remember this really cryptic tweet that Cliff Bleszinski said a while back? He says, "Let's do Resident Evil together." Well, what he meant actually was that he was reaching out to his buddy George A. Romero, the director of the very famous Night of the Living Dead, and Capcom as well, because the thing is, the interesting thing is, Romero was supposed to do the original Resident Evil movies. He did do 2 commercials for them, the Biohazard 2 commercials, but because of that it never went out because he didn't get to do the movies, some bad blood. Anyways, Cliffy B comes in, he's like, "Come on, bros, I got this." So what we have now is a game called Resident Evil Noir. So what exactly is Resident Evil Noir? Well, it could be Capcom's direct answer to The Evil Within. I mean, The Evil Within was made by Shinji Mikami, who also created Resident Evil, and I'm sure Capcom misses him. Anyways, that being said, this game is kind of like a combination of Horde mode, because Cliffy B, Gears of War, right? Tower defense, because you're in a house in Pennsylvania, an abandoned farmhouse, you have to defend yourself, and also Telltale Games The Walking Dead, because you will be playing either as Ben or Cooper. Depending on who you play with, your choices does indeed affect the ending. Now this sounds like a lot of fun, especially with the weapons, knowing that any gun you pick up in the game only will have 2 to 3 bullets, survival horror. Most likely you'll be using a bunch of melee weapons such as axes, as seen in the movie, the 1968 movie, or also pitchforks and even other whatever melee weapons you could find or craft in the game. What's also interesting to point out is that the game itself is heavily desaturated, i.e. black and white, so you'll be playing a huge blast from the past. As well, the news bulletins that you've seen in the movie, they've actually been ripped from the movie because it's public domain and it's been put inside the game for the authentic feel. Now one more thing, this rumor is quite interesting because you're like, well hey, what does this have to do with Resident Evil? Well, apparently, if you're playing as Ben or Cooper, they may have some links to the origin stories of Leon S. Kennedy and Jill Valentine. Yeah! So that is one huge tie-in. They're really going back to the beginning. And I mean, let's see where else they do with this. Now this is coming out later in 2015. We don't know much about it, but from what I've seen so far and what I've heard, this is something that I really want to play because 1, I miss Resident Evil 2. Zombies really need to come back if it's done by Romero because let's face it, he is the master. Now I don't know much, but I know definitely 2 things, and the first thing is that Miley Cyrus always has her tongue out. She cannot put that thing away. It is permanently blah. And also the second thing is that when we talked about Goat Simulator a few episodes back, well, we made the connection between the goat and Miley. Now speaking of that, there is actually a day 1 mod coming out for the launch of Goat Simulator, which is April the 1st. And this mod is pretty much putting Miley's head on the goat. It makes a lot of sense. Now the tongue itself will be working as a tether, so you can use it just like the game. And as you can see with the leaked screenshots, this is what we got so far. So we have, here are 2 pictures of Miley flying through the air. It looks really, really good. And we have one of her standing in front of a house. It's kind of hot. I think it's interesting. And the third one is her out of a stone mill. I guess that's what it is. It doesn't matter. Her tongue is glorious. And the last one, of course, is her doing a backflip. So, you know, if you want this, once again, you can get it at MileyCyrusTongue.com. Scroll to the bottom. The mod is right there. And in the meantime, enjoy yourselves. Now the Xbox One global release has been really big news. I mean, every single country, maybe except for Australia as well as Germany, has been kind of clamoring for the new Xbox One. Well, one country that picked it up, out of all the countries that picked it up, this one was very, very weird. Now, according to State Media News, that's right, North Korea has totally adopted the Xbox One. And we're not talking about the Xbox One that we know. We're talking about the old Xbox One, i.e. pre-E3, the one with everything that tracks your heartbeat, your body monitor, just knowing where you live, all the information, the fact that it can just look at you, everything in your house and get that information makes sense because, hey, the dear leader needs to know about your steez. Now, this system will only come with 2 games because that's all they have for development right now. And the first game will be a basketball themed game. Dennis Rodman apparently has some sort of influence in this game because you know Kim Jong-un loves basketball as well as his friend Rodman. And also there's Pong because it's free and it's easy to do and implement. Now these 2 games will reflect the Juche ideals of North Korea, and on the leaderboards, well, I mean the dear leaderboards, you'll actually have the names, strangely enough, you'll have the names of Kim Jong-il and Kim Il-sung. They're still there on the top, which means they're still with us, I assume. Now, North Korean scientists also have features on the Xbox One that we have not seen yet, and we'll probably never know about, nor do we actually want, but, you know, good for them. Anyways, this looks like a lot of fun for people. I mean, it makes a lot of sense because the trend of introducing Doctor Who and short skirts into North Korea, well, it's like Freedom kind of, or Freedom Light, and now that you have the Xbox One, or in North Korea called the Xbox Un, well, it's gonna be out really, really soon. Steven Seagal, you probably know who he is, but if you don't, here's a quick refresher course. Now, first of all, he's the first Westerner to open an Aikido dojo in Japan. That's a huge deal because he is an Aikido genius. Secondly, he is a giant Hollywood movie star. You guys probably know because you've seen movies such as Out for Justice and Marked for Death. Thirdly, he has trained MMA fighters with champion moves such as the front kick of doom, i.e. Anderson de Silva. Now with all this, on top of the fact that he once challenged Jean-Claude Van Damme to a fight in a house party, well, this makes Mr. Steven Seagal a dangerous man indeed. He is indeed dangerous. And speaking of danger, he has just released to the public a really crazy game that we never even heard about until today. Now, first of all, secretly, he's been using this arcade game called Breaker Breaker to train a bunch of special forces on the art of killing and defending themselves. In this game, as you can see here, we have an artist rendition. This is what it's gonna look like. Steven Seagal's giant face welcoming you, beckoning you to face the Fist of Fury because there are 4 fists in this console. You have to break them, you have to defend them. If you don't, well, you're gonna get your face smacked in, you're gonna get your stuff just wrecked. Now, that being said, you have to sign a release form in this game. Interestingly enough, you have to write it on the digital screen, and there has been rumors about this, about how this could actually be a recruitment tool for the special forces. Now, we have a lot of questions, and the thing is we actually have them for an interview. So, Mr. Steven Seagal, welcome you to our show, and let's do some questions about Breaker Breaker. So, welcome Mr. Seagal to our show, big fan. Now the first question I want to ask you is this. Now we know that Breaker Breaker has been used for special forces and the product being released for the public is a toned-down version, but that being said, the original version, who used it out of the special forces?
Between the different branches of police officers, FSB, Spetsnaz and Alpha Spetsnaz, and international folks. Intelligence branches and law enforcement branches from all over the world.
With this arcade version, you're going to be learning a lot of skills. And with these skills, I want to ask you this. What type of people can you take on with these skills?
You know, the most evil, rotten, murdering criminals on earth, people, you know, bringing in marijuana, you know, hippies or something.
That's wonderful. Now, I've heard there's going to be a home version of Breaker Breaker, and it's going to have a peripheral and whatnot. But that being said, of course, there's the console war, right? The war on not terror or anything like that, but on consoles. And that being said, what system would you find Breaker Breaker on? Xbox One or the PS4?
I think this is a very dangerous stance to take, and it's a very dangerous game to play. I mean, at this point, you know, what we really want are cool heads and diplomatic dialogue. We should be at the height of diplomacy right now and trying to see if we can come up with a solution that's good for everybody. That's what we should
Now, I understand
really
if you can't tell us which system you want your Breaker Breaker on. I mean, there is a console war going on. But, you know, let's have some fun with science, perhaps, since we're doing this interview, and I know the people at home, they want to know. So if that's the case, let me ask you, do you want to see Breaker Breaker on, say, the PS4 or maybe the Xbox One? Or... Was that a sign? Oh, well, okay, then I guess, thank you. There you have it. I guess that was a sign. Thank you, Mr. Segal, for your interview on Breaker Breaker. There you have it, folks. Breaker Breaker will be coming out very, very soon. Make sure you sign that release form because this game is dangerous. Indeed, just like Steven Seagal. It's that moment you've been waiting for. Prize time! Favorite moment of the week where I give you free stuff. Now, prize time works like this. It's very, very simple. I give you a question, you give me an answer, and if you get it right, I'm gonna get you some swag. Now, ground rules, if you know the answer to my question, please put it in our inbox, not the comments. The inbox, not the comments, and specify whether or not, you know, guys, I'm Mizer. I drank a lot of water, and I'm sorry, and I go back to green screen. I gotta go pee, man. I gotta go.